All right, what is going on, guys? In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a really cool filter feature on your NuxtJS blog. And I'm also going to be using Tailwind, so if you guys are using Tailwind, awesome. If not, no hard feelings. You'll be able to follow along just fine. The finished product will look something like this. We have a list of categories here, and when we deselect all the categories, we'll have no post selected. Try adding a category. When we have a category, it will find all blog posts with the category marketing. And category in this case is just a piece of markup front matter that you guys can really easily adjust, and I'll show you how. And if you select multiple, it'll just have a super big array of all of the blog posts that contain those categories. Really easy way for somebody to come to your site that, I don't know, is looking for productivity help and just instantly narrow down productivity stuff. Or maybe they just don't care about your miscellaneous posts. They can just put everything and then just click miscellaneous to take that out of the equation, right? And this will give you an indication just of how many freaking posts I have on social skills on my blog. So this is a local host that I spun up here with the finished product. What I'm going to do is actually I'm going to use this other page, blog 2, that does not have this feature installed. And then I'm just going to basically just run you guys through it from top to bottom. How to get something like this in your blog, how to use NuxtJS like content module in order to sort through all this stuff. This isn't going to be super exhaustive. If you guys don't know how to get content using the NuxtJS content module, I'll include a link in the description that will help you guys do that. But hopefully this should at least give you guys a little bit more of an idea of how to implement something like this. Last thing I want to say just before I start is this is not the only way to implement it. In fact, it's probably not the best way to do it whatsoever, but it certainly works. I like working with certain data structures more than others, and I like doing things in certain ways more than others. So if you guys think that there is a better way that you can do this, I highly encourage you guys to try it out. Okay, so let's get into it. We're going to go to this blog 2 page here, and just clicking through before and after, it looks like really the only difference here is this little snippet of front end that we need to add. So it's just a bunch of colored buttons that appear to be arranged in Flexbox that we are going to add onto here. Now, before I actually do a little bit of coding, I'm just going to run you guys through what this page looks like, because I always hate it when guides don't do that. First thing is we have a navigation bar up at the top. That's this component here. Next, we have a bunch of HTML that just describes this section, recent articles, and then the latest thoughts, experiments, and essays. Then underneath that, we have a component called blog list, which takes as a prop articles. And then we have a bottom footer. And if we scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page, that's this down here. So the blog list, I'm sure you guys can tell, makes up the bulk of this page. And if you guys don't know how to get content with NuxtJS content, I'm not going to go into that, but suffice to say, it really depends on how many blog posts you have. In my case, I have quite a few. A lot of SEO blog posts that I made quite a while ago. So to parse through all that stuff can be kind of challenging if you're unfamiliar with it. The only thing I'm going to say on the content module is you basically just need a function like this. I mean, I'm pretty sure I just copy and pasted this in from the docs. It's just an async function called async data, which takes destructured $ content and then params. And then you just return this articles constant that you get through just awaiting this content function, which then, takes articles, the name, and then params.slug, then only fetches the title, description, image, slug, date, categories, the front matter, and then fetches. I also did a little bit of sorting down here, but that's not super important. I just wanted to make sure the date was kind of from most recent to least recent. Then at the end, we return this articles object. If you guys are familiar with it, this articles object can just be used just like anything else on your page. If you guys are more familiar with this, this is literally the exact same thing. It's just, I would actually have to put all the articles in here. That's why we use the content module to grab those for you. So anyway, we feed this articles object, or rather articles array, to blog list. If I were to find this, it's in components. Blog list just looks something like this. It iterates using a v4 through an article in this.loaded posts. Loaded posts, I believe, is just another way to say articles, essentially. And I just had to use loaded posts. I had to create another variable just to store a bunch of stuff. But essentially, that's all it is. It just takes every blog post in your directory and then just goes bang, there's one, bang, there's another, bang, there's another, so on and so on and so forth, all the way through your content directory. I've added little things like dates here, a little article description, right? I think I might have just taken 80% of this from just Tailwind's blog, because I absolutely love the way that they sorted their stuff out. Obviously, I changed a few things, I would like to hope. But suffice to say, that is basically all that's going on there with that blog list component. In terms of actually instituting this button functionality, first thing I'm going to do is actually work on the front end. And I know it's surprising to a lot of people because a lot of people always encourage you to work on the back end, but I don't know. I always find it just a lot easier to start with the front end and kind of work my way backward from there. I'm not saying it's the best way to do it. In fact, it's almost certainly not. But yeah, it's something that you guys can do if you guys want to follow along. So first thing I have to do is I just want to make a div that's over here. Luckily, I had the foresight to create a grid with 2 grid columns on a large display. And this is a large display. If I were to zoom in, it would become a small display, but I think this here is large. So there should be 2 columns, one on the left, there should be one on the right. And I'm just going to double check that by creating a div with the class of bgred200 and then saving. And yeah, there we go. It's stretched across the width of that container. Great. We have this div here now. Now, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to literally just start creating a bunch of buttons, or rather not buttons, divs. And we're going to see how that goes. Let's do bg blue 200. Let's just add a little bit of height here and a little bit of width. And then let's actually do this too. Let's say shadow small, rounded small, and then cursor pointer. I'm going to create the ending tag for that. And let's just call this, I believe I call this productivity. I'll check in a moment. Perfect. Awesome. So we have this button. The issue is this button is currently full width. We do not want that. So why don't we just do flex? I'm going to be adding a bunch of other stuff here. So I'll do space x2. And I'm going to want this to wrap later. So I'll do space y2. And let's just do flex wrap 2. And then for now, why don't we do justify end? Actually, let's do LG justify end because we're only going to do this on large screens. Great. Awesome. So now we have this beautiful little button. And now all I'm going to do is just copy and paste this a couple times. Let's see how that looks. We have productivity, productivity, productivity. Awesome. Why don't we do futurology? And do this one. We'll call this marketing. That looks good. I'm going to make every piece of text here pretty small, and I'm also going to force it down to the bottom of the page with items end. So it should be smack in the middle, right where I want it to be. And then what else are we going to do? Let's have no margin in this display, but when the screen gets smaller, ooh, this is a bad idea. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. When the screen gets smaller, why don't we add a little bit of a margin? Let's do margin 8. Perfect. That looks fine. Maybe a little too big. Let's do MT6. Now let's take this BG red off because we no longer need it. And why don't we actually do MT5? I'm very impatient with this stuff. Okay, I have a couple more buttons to make, so I'm just going to like copy and paste these extra ones here. And these are all just going to be the different categories that I have on my blog. So I have several different categories of like a productivity category, a programming category, social skills category, marketing. I believe the ones that I did here were productivity, futurology, marketing, social skills, miscellaneous. So I'm just going to copy that. Productivity, futurology, we have marketing, social skills, and then we have miscellaneous. Let's just go back, make sure that's fine. Perfect. Awesome. And you'll notice these look slightly different. That's perfectly fine. I'm not just like copying and pasting this, and I'm just doing most of this from memory. So yeah, one other thing I want to do is I want to change the colors of these a little bit because I just don't like them when they're all the same color. You totally can if you want to, but I'm going to make it a rainbow because I feel fabulous today. So blue, yellow, red, why don't we do indigo, and then what is another cool color? Green? Yeah, let's try that out. That looks pretty rainbowy. I wonder if they have teal. I don't know if I'm using the right version. Yeah, hell yeah. Oops, sorry. We totally do have teal. Excellent, awesome. Let me show you guys something really cool too that you can do with VS Code if you're unfamiliar. Just like you have multiple cursor selections. So on Windows, I just did Command-Shift-L and I got this, but on Mac, it might be different. Just like I did multiple cursor selection, you can also do multiple cursor copy. And the way that you do that is you just go to multiple cursor selection and then just copy. And it'll automatically copy at every individual cursor, whatever you copied. So in my case, I did BG blue 200, BG yellow 200, so on and so forth. To save me all that time, I'm just going to go hover, paste that in, and then make it a little bit darker. So now it should go a little bit darker, and it does. God, I really like that teal. And then let's also add a transition and a duration. Let's do 200. So that when I mouse over this, we got this like slow kind of darkening, which is a really cool effect that I really like. Yeah, man, T looks way better than whatever this is. I'm totally going to be using that later. Great, so now we have a bunch of these divs that are flex aligned. Let me just make sure that this wraps properly. I don't even think I can get it to wrap, which is a pretty good sign. Why don't I do this? Yeah, there you go. That wraps fine. Awesome. So now that we're done with the front end, or rather these buttons, let me work you guys through a little bit more of the back end. And just in terms of like what I mean by back end, the first thing I mean is we need to make these buttons do something. So when I click on one of these buttons, there needs to be something that happens. In Vue, you can use an @click handler, and that's what I like to do for stuff like this. So I'm going to use multiple cursors to select every button, and then I'm just going to go @click, and we're just going to create a method. I think before I called it toggle, which is a hilariously bad name for a method. But I'm going to just keep that as is. I'm also going to be passing in an event parameter, and the event parameter is just like any other HTML event action, or I believe it's just called an event. When you click on something, for example, you'll be able to get the target of what you clicked on. You'll be able to get a bunch of information about that element. We're going to be using that to grab the name, in this case productivity, and use that to filter through stuff later. So we have an @click with a toggle event. Awesome. Let's save that. And looks like it's hanging a little bit. Let's go all the way down to the bottom. This, awesome. Looks like it's done. In order to test this out, I'm just going to give this a quick click. And when I click this, because we have no toggle method defined, yeah, there you go. This says toggle is not a function. Believe it or not, that is exactly what we wanted. So from here on out, now that we've done that front end, why don't we do a little bit, I mean, this is still technically front end, but why don't we do a little bit about, a little bit of defining the object, or rather array that we're going to be screwing around with. So I'm going to use data, then return, and I'm going to create a selected array. The selected array is just going to include all of the various categories on my site. So productivity, futurology, marketing, social skills, miscellaneous. Productivity. Futurology, thank goodness I'm fast at typing. Marketing, social skills, and social skills kill, and miscellaneous. And because I'm going to be using this information, let me just really triple check that it's spelled correctly. Yeah, I think that's how you spell miscellaneous. Good. So awesome. Now we have this array with this selected, we have this data function, I suppose, that returns this array called selected, which has all this information. That is awesome. This is the data structure we're going to be using to represent this. Like I mentioned earlier, you guys can use a bunch of different ones to represent this. This probably isn't the best way to do it. I just know a lot of array methods, and that's just what I feel comfortable using. So from here on out, we're going to want to do a couple things. First thing I'm going to want to do is when I click on this, or rather when I when I click on this, rather, I'm going to want this to change a little bit. I'm going to want this to kind of get a little bit translucent so that people know that it got clicked on. And there's a really easy way to do that. First thing I got to do, though, is I have to define the method that I want to use for this. So I'm going to be using a method called toggle. Yes, that is what it's called. We're going to be using toggle. Toggle is going to take in an event. Keep in mind, you can use whatever event you want here. I mean, I could have called this E, I can call this Q, I can call this Chihuahua. I don't know if that's how you spell Chihuahua, but I'm going to call this event. And this event is going to, rather this method is going to take an event and it's going to do stuff with it. First thing I want to do is I'm just going to call element event.target. So that means that when I click on this, I should instantly create a variable called element that's const scoped. I think it's just block scoped rather with const. That then includes this. It represents this document object. So on top of that, why don't I just do like a little sanity check and say, yay, you clicked the following element. And then we'll just do element. That should work. So now every time I click this, I should get a little console message with some very helpful information. Highly encourage you guys to constantly use these types of sanity checks. They really do keep me alive. Now I'm going to be zooming out a little bit. I don't want to zoom out too much, just don't want you guys to be able to see it. So hopefully you guys can still see this. But let me give this a quick click. And awesome, it says, yay, you click the following element object HTML div element. Yes, the reason that pops up is because this is an object, it's not a string. So if I wanted this to show up as a string, I would have to go text content. There you go. That should work. So if I give this a quick click, you'll say, yay, you clicked the following element, productivity. Except, why is it so spaced out? I'll tell you why. Because the way that my auto formatter works here, and this can occur to you guys too if you guys are using Prettier or Beautify or anything like that, is it adds a bunch of white space in. And when we take the text content, we're also taking in that white space. So you can solve this in a number of different ways. I just like to trim the text content to solve that for me. And now when we click productivity, you'll see, yeah, you click the following element, productivity, futurology, marketing, social skills, miscellaneous, and there's no extra space there, which is really nice. Anyway, now that we have that sanity check in place, I'm just going to leave that there, and I'm going to do a quick if-then. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to look for this word, productivity, in my selected array and say, hey, if this is there, then I want to take this productivity off of the selected array. If it's not there, then I want to add this productivity onto the selected array. That way we can toggle this data structure just by clicking on a button. Okay, the way that I'm going to do that is I'm going to go if this.selected dot, I believe it's not contains, it's includes. And then we're going to say element.text content.trim. Actually, probably shouldn't be repeating myself, so why don't I just say text content, just call that element.text content. Why don't we actually just call this text? There you go, that'll be easier. So let's just do trim. There you go. So let's say if this dot selected, let's also, I'm a stickler for nice, short, readable code. It's a joke because my code definitely isn't. Yeah, you're going to get this just because we did not finish this. But if this dot selected includes text, then I want to do something. I want to go to my element. I want to find the class list, and I want to add an opacity class of 50. And that is, I think I used 25 before, but I think 50 is actually going to look better. Now, every time we click on a button, and every time that this selected array includes text, it will automatically make it more opaque. And we're going to remove that from this array. The way that we're going to do that is we're going to say this.selected.splice. Splice is an array method which basically takes two things. First, it takes the location in the array from which to start removing elements. And then the next thing it does is it says how many elements are you going to remove from here. So we're only going to remove one element. And the location in the array where it will start with is, we can find that out just by saying this.selected.index of, and then we can just go text. Okay, so we're saying, hey, splice out wherever this index of the element that we're looking for is, and then just go one further, remove that element, and then we're good to go. Else, if this selected does not include text, we are now going to say remove this opacity. So let's remove opacity 50, and then we're going to push that text to the array. So yeah, that should work. So we're just going to give that a quick save. And now we should have a couple of things pop up. When I click this, yes, we should say, yay, you click the following element, productivity, but I suppose there's no way that we can know that we just did that. All right, great. I'm going to add another sanity check in here really quickly. That says this.selected. And then I'm also going to add one down here. Essentially what I've done is I'm saying, hey, after every click, I want you to show me the current state of this selected array. It's just how we're going to keep tabs on things. Awesome. So I went over this productivity, I clicked it, and now we see the array has futurology, marketing, social skills, miscellaneous. That's exactly what we wanted. If I click this again, we should add productivity to that array. So let's do it. Awesome. Futurology, marketing, social skills, miscellaneous, and productivity. Do the same thing with futurology. Awesome. Looks like it's working. Marketing. How about if we just take all of them out? Ooh, now it's just miscellaneous. What if we take that out too? Now we got nothing. Now we add miscellaneous back in, marketing, futurology, productivity. Awesome. This isn't a very exhaustive test by any means, but it certainly sates our purpose here. With that done, we now have a method that manipulates a data structure on our page called selected. From here on out, we can get into the finer logic of actually manipulating this based off that data structure. So now we can start filtering. The way that we filter, in Nuxt anyway, is 95% of the time I just use a computed property. This computed property can be called anything. It's basically just a getter. It just filters things, and then even though it's like a function, so in this case it's like filtered the function, it acts just like a variable that you can reference anywhere in your code. The way that I'm going to make this is I'll create a function here, or a computed property called filtered. And then I'm going to say if the length of this selected is 0, I just want to return nothing. If it's not 0, then I want to filter. Let's do this. Return this.articles.filter. Then I'm going to use an arrow function here that then returns only the posts that have a category that is in selected. So let me go through that one more time here. The way that this computed property works is if the length of selected is 0, then it just returns nothing and nothing happens. Otherwise, if the length of selected is not 0, it will return this.articles.filter. So it'll go to my articles array, it'll filter it, and it will take, actually, let me do this, article. It will filter articles, and then it will grab this article and say this.selected.includes article category. This little snippet of code down here just says, hey, let's look inside of selected. If selected includes the category of any of these particular posts, we're doing a filter, so we're running through every single post in that array. If the category is inside of here, then I want you to show it. If the category is not inside of here, then don't show it. What we end up with is we end up with a data structure where it's only shown if it is in this array, and it's only in this array if it is basically turned on, if it's like selected. Now, I'm going to save this. If I click this, you're not actually going to see anything happen. We have our little console log statement from earlier, but that's about it. And the reason is because we are passing this as a prop to blog list, which is the component I showed you guys earlier. And that's actually a little different than if you were not using a component. If you're using a component and you're passing this in as a prop, you need to dynamically, or rather you need to force the component to re-render every single time that computed property changes. In Nuxt, there are a couple different ways you can do this. But probably the best way is to use a key and to use a VF. The way that I personally do that is I just create something like comp key. I'll set it to 0, and then I will make it so that every single time I toggle something, so every single time I change something, it changes that comp key. So sorry, let me do this.comp key. There we go. So what I've done here is essentially I've created a piece of data in this page called comp key. It just stands for component key. And every single time I click on this button, it is going to iterate comp key by 1. I mean, you could do anything you want. You could like subtract it. You could multiply it by 50. You could do literally whatever you wanted. But all we're going to be doing here is just changing that so that we can tell the page, hey, it's time to reload. And we can pass that information onto a blog list. So I'm going to save that. And the last thing we have to do now is we have to add that key information to our blog list component. So I'm going to, actually, first thing we should do is we should do a VF, actually. So I'm going to only render this if this.selected.length is greater than 0. Good. And then I'm going to say that the key is comp key. Let's just sort that out a little bit. Awesome. And let me just make sure that that looks good. Perfect. Let's give this a quick try. We'll notice that it is still not refreshing except when we go 0. And I believe the reason for that is because we didn't provide a velse, did we? No, we didn't provide a velse. I'll make a quick div here, just say velse. And I'm literally just going to include the following text. There are no posts left. Have you tried adding a category? Should refresh here. And now when we go all the way down to 0, we should see there are no posts left. Great. Now I'm just going to add another class here because I want it to pop up right in the middle. So let's bring this over there. Good. And yeah, it looks like we're good to go. So let me give that a quick save. and add productivity. Awesome. Oh, actually, no, it doesn't actually appear to be working. It looks like we're getting categories that are not productivity here. So let's try debugging this. Let's see why that happens. All right, so after an eternity of looking around for that bug, just kidding, it was only a minute or two, I realized that the issue was that we were not referencing our new computed property filtered. So if we go all the way up to this page, all the way up the page here to blog list, you see here that it is taking in the props articles, and it is currently getting articles. That's this. In order for us to reflect what we are getting from our computed property down here, all we have to do is just type a variable with whatever this function name is, right? So filtered, we just leave the little brackets out. And now if I click this button, perfect. We have the functionality essentially right where we wanted it. If we remove all posts except for productivity, you can see that we only have productivity category posts on the right-hand side. If we were to add some futurology, now we got some futurology, marketing, social skills, miscellaneous, and so on and so forth. That is essentially how you do it from start to finish. Like I said earlier, if you guys have any issues with NuxtJS/content, I encourage you guys to check out the docs. They're probably some of the best docs I've ever seen in any Nuxt module. But for those of you that don't really know, or rather just want a quick like copy paste method, this is essentially all you need to do. What this is going to be doing is grabbing the title, the description, the image, the slug, the date, and the category, properties from your frontmatter here. So if I were to change this to productivity, for example, it would change this markdown post from a marketing category to a productivity category. I don't want to do that, so I'm just going to leave that there. But you can do that with any other property as well. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you guys learned something. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. I'm more than happy to help you guys. Just leave a comment down below. As always, like and subscribe. It really does help me reach more people. And I hope that you found that helpful. Have a great rest of the day.